See?
But it went like just 1 second after.
Anna wanted me to wait until it was exactly on time.
Well, so I said wait until 2.
So we're doing a late night live tonight. Anna's actually going to be heading off to bed in a few minutes. We finished up our whole day, and now we're getting around to this. So sorry for folks on the East Coast. You'll have to maybe replay this later if it's too late for you. But I want to talk tonight about Anna's first year of life and the things that we had to do and places we had to go. Yesterday, if you missed it, we got on and talked about, the day before, we got on and talked about AMC babies in utero and her birth, which was by C-section. And you can see on our thumbnail, there's a little image of what she looked like when she was born. So some of you might have some ads, and hopefully they are wrapping up. If you didn't know, if you let the ads play for a full 30 seconds, we actually get credit for them, and that helps us out a ton with ad revenue. And if you're not already following our channel, you can click the subscribe button. That's just a follow. It doesn't cost any money. It's just YouTube's way of saying, I'm following this channel, and you'll get notifications and such when we go live. Okay, I'm going to get right into it.
Okay.
So Anna was born with her legs stuck bent and her arms stuck straight. And what that means is that her knees were in flexion or bent up, as you see in the photograph, and she could not straighten them. As we talked the other day, babies with arthrogryposis, they have calcifications on their joints, and those calcifications prevent their joints from moving. So her little legs were stuck way up and her feet were clubbed. In fact, her left foot was turned almost completely upside down, and the right foot was clubbed just kind of like a normal club foot. But there's nothing normal about arthrogryposis club foot. And that's something that a lot of people don't know when they hear that AMC babies have club feet. They're like, oh, my baby had club feet too. And typical club feet babies, they also have to go through a similar process of straightening the club foot and wearing braces and going through therapy and all of that. But the difference is that your mainstream or typical club feet, they actually take that correction and they keep it pretty much forever. And so you don't have to go back periodically and recorrect a typical club foot. With arthrogryposis club feet, they are very regressive. And in fact, the entirety of an AMCer's body likes to regress every time that child goes through a growth spurt. So especially in the first few years of life, there's lots of regression to fight. So you can go through the process of treatment and surgery and therapy to straighten out the limbs very early on, but it's a constant struggle and fight to keep it that way. So in addition to the knees stuck in flexion and the club feet, she had clubbed wrists, which you could see in her ultrasound and in her birth photo, and she still has today. And she had her little arms were stuck straight and she couldn't bend them at all. So the very first surgery that Anna had to make corrections to her body was when she was 4.5 months old. Prior to 4.5 months old, there's a lot of serial casting. And if you've been following our page for a while, you've heard a lot about serial casting because we have to go do it every year. Are you ready for bed?
I'm just waiting.
Waiting for what?
I don't know, for me to leave. I'm just sitting here.
You can go ahead and say goodnight to everyone. I'm just going to be yapping.
Yapping on and on.
Good night.
And on and on.
Good night.
Don't push me away.
I wasn't. I was leaning my head on you. Thank you, Sharon, for the super sticker. Okay, sleep well. I love you.
Good night, everybody.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, I will see you tomorrow. Yes, I will take my unicorn. I'll take my hair tie.
Okay.
This is my unicorn. Her name is Ray, by the way.
Okay, so yeah, the first 4 years of her life were a lot of serial casting, and that is the process where they put you in casts in your legs, and every 3 to 4 days, they changed the casts in order to make small corrections. Now, when Anna was born, she was born in Canada. And so, a fun fact, many AMC families, many families with kids with arthrogryposis who live in Canada do travel to the US for their medical care, because there's only a very few places in Canada that have a lot of experience with the care of arthrogryposis, and where Anna was when she was born wasn't one of them. So they did know how to do serial casting, but then they also lived quite far from the hospital where the treatment was happening, and so her casts were only getting changed like once every week or two. And that's not typical of serial casting. If you get in with an AMC specialist from the beginning, they do the very rapid serial casting where the casts get changed every 3-4 days. But anyway, she did 4 months of this to straighten out her knees as much as they possibly could, her feet, her ankles, her knees, and kind of bring everything down, and mostly to put her feet into a more typical position that your feet would be in. And at the conclusion of that casting, we had made the shift from the situation as it was to me taking care of her full time. And so we were in Michigan, where I lived, and she was going to, at the time we went for treatment at Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor at U of M. And so they did her first surgery, which was called a bilateral tenotomy. And basically what that is a heel cord release. And they go in behind the ankles and they nick your Achilles tendon to allow it to loosen. Because if you recall from the other day when we talked about babies in utero with arthrogryposis, not only do they have contractures on their joints, but because the muscles and the tendons form after the joints, the muscles and the tendons are very tight. And so that's one of the things that happens with regression. It's not just the reformation of calcifications. It's also very much the tightening of tendons and muscles, which are pulling things back into the position they were in when the AMCer was born. So she had this tenotomy to loosen up her ankles and her feet and put them even more in a typical position. And then she was back in casts for another 6 weeks while that healed. Let's see. Having a baby with arthrogryposis is not really that much different than having a typical baby, outside of the mass amounts of medical appointments that you have. I had legal guardianship of her at the time, and so I had to keep track of all of her medical care, and I kept a spreadsheet. And every year I would report to the court about her medical care. And I think we had something like 300 medical appointments in a year's time. The first few years of her life. And the first few years of an AMCer's life are typically, if you start treatment immediately, going to be the most intense. You're going to be doing the most running around, the most surgeries, the most therapy, the most appointments. And then once everything gets into place, it just becomes like maintenance phase, and it's not as intense later on. But it takes some time to get there. Her second surgery. So during pregnancy, I was doing tons of research trying to figure out the best way to care for a little human with arthrogryposis. And I found the moms group. So if any moms are watching this who are pregnant with a baby who's been diagnosed with arthrogryposis, or even if it's beyond, if you have a young AMCer or even an older AMCer, there is a group on Facebook called the Arthrogryposis Moms Group. It's been around probably the longest of about anything out there. And I highly recommend, like it's always what I tell moms first thing, join that group, because the moms are the true experts. Like, yes, doctors know lots of things medically, but most doctors don't know anything about arthrogryposis. And so it's usually the moms who will tell the doctors, this is what I need to do. This is what my child needs. This is what has to happen. And if you don't have a doctor who knows how to do those things, then typically you find one who does. And there's only a handful of AMC specialists in the entirety of the world. Most of the really good ones are in the United States, and there's like a top 5. If you want to go to the best of the best of the best, it's like a top 5 in the US. One of those top doctors is Dr. Feldman at the Paley Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is where Anna's been receiving her care since she was 3. Prior to that, we went to Shriners in Philadelphia. They have some AMC specialists there that are good if you don't have private insurance. If your child has Medicaid, that may be the better option for you. There's also Shriners in Greenville, South Carolina. They have AMC specialists. There's DuPont Medical Center in Delaware. They have AMC specialists. And there's a couple of people in Texas I'm not remembering the name of the facility right now, but they're okay. I see mixed reviews about them. So after we were at U of M, after she got her heel cord release, we started seeing a PT through U of M. She was put immediately into AFOs to maintain what they did with the surgery. Lots and lots and lots and lots of therapy, lots of PT, lots of OT, many times a week. Her next surgery wasn't until she was a year old. We went down to Shriners in Philadelphia to have her right elbow release done. But between that time, it was really just a ton of therapy. If you find a good physical therapist who knows what they're doing with arthrogryposis, they will have you on a very strict regimen, usually 2 to 3 times a week. You'll go into therapy for an hour. They'll do a lot of different things at therapy. But the worst thing that I think a parent with an AMCer can do is believe that the time you're in therapy is all you need to do. And hopefully your therapist is telling you, is giving you exercises and instructions and things to do at home. But AMCers really need a lot of stretching on a daily basis, morning and night. And they really need to be as physical as possible to keep as much mobility as possible. So the best thing that you can do for your young AMC or infant AMCer is to do that stretching for them. We were told after surgeries to do stretching at every diaper change. So that's just constantly throughout the day, anywhere where you've done therapy, anywhere you've had surgeries, anywhere where you want to get loosen the fascia in the body and kind of loosen things up. You just go through, come up with a program, come up with a process, and just kind of go through that methodically every time you have a moment during the day. Especially maybe taking more so time to do it in the morning and more so time to do it at night before bed. Margaret's asking if Anna still stretches at night. She does, although now she's had major leg surgery. And so the main thing with her is stretching her knees, and that happens with a set of KFOs. She did not have KFOs before she was a year old, so it was very different back when she was little. And I know that, a lot of parents worry that they're going to possibly injure their child, and they don't want to stretch too far, but there really is a point of resistance, and you'll hear that talked about a lot when AMCers are little. You want to stretch to the point of resistance. You can feel it. Like, it's just like your own. If you take your own wrist right now and you stretch it backward, you're going to feel the point where it becomes really almost impossible to push any further. And it's the same way with AMCers. And just because their wrists might be born in a different position, than a typical child doesn't mean that there's pain. It feels exactly the same as if it were in this position versus this position. It's just in a different position. There's no difference in the feeling. That's one thing that made me a little bit sad, because like I said, Anna was born at a facility that didn't have knowledge of arthrogryposis. They had this assumption that she was in pain when she was born just because her body looked different, and they didn't want her birth mom to hold her. And this went on for like 3 days, and it was very frustrating. So that was unfortunate, and hopefully medical professionals now are learning better or know better. But the sad fact is that even today, most medical professionals don't know what arthrogryposis is. They may have heard of it in passing, but many of them haven't even heard of it. And so they don't have any kind of training, and they don't see nearly enough AMCers to be able to help them in the best way. And just because a doctor knows, or a therapist knows how to do serial casting, because maybe they've done it for a typical clubfoot child or some other reason, still doesn't mean they know how best to do serial casting for someone with arthrogryposis, because it is different. It is different. And that's why it's so important that young AMCers go to an AMC specialist, not just a doctor who knows how to do serial casting, but an actual AMC specialist. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are very few, and it requires travel, sometimes across the country. And it's very, very difficult for families to make that happen. That's one of the reasons why Anna and I started a nonprofit back in 2020. We have this platform. We had a lot of people following our story, and we knew that we could, I knew that we could utilize resources from all of those people making donations to help other AMC families. And so we started doing that in 2020, and we've helped many AMC families with the expenses for either getting private insurance so they can go to a private care facility like the Paley Institute, or just the cost of traveling across the country and staying there for weeks on end in order to get intensive therapies and surgeries and things like that for their kiddos. Because it's a really big expense, and it's a really big, what's the word? Like, you have to be dedicated to it, right? Let's see, what else? Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to go very soon because I'm trying to keep these live streams short, but we're talking about the first year of an AMCer's life. So if anybody has any questions related to year one, birth, very first things you do, anything like that, I'm willing to answer a couple of questions before I go. Let me scroll back and see if I missed anything. Michael says, I'm wondering if those best doctors for AMC care give training to worldwide doctors so they understand AMC better to give proper care, or at least share information at conventions. That's an amazing question, Michael. And I'm so glad you asked, because I meant to mention that. But yes, the answer is yes. There are a few different doctors who definitely share their experience and share information. And where Anna is going to receive care at the Paley Institute in Florida, they actually allow shadowing. So if you want to keep your AMCer as local as possible, because that's easier for your family, perhaps you have other children at home, or you're a single parent and it's really difficult for you to travel for that care. If you find a doctor, a surgeon, and or a therapist that is open to learning from another doctor or therapist, they can absolutely contact the team at the Paley Institute and make arrangements to video chat with them. They can watch their videos and presentations that they've done all over the world. They can go on site and shadow them, which is what Anna's physical therapist did, to learn from them exactly how to do serial casting, exactly how to do best therapy practices. Paley is very open to that. And so it's a great opportunity for medical professionals to learn all of these procedures and treatments and take them back to their local area. And I mean, that would be a great goal for the AMC community, to have care that is more local, so families don't have to travel so far to get their care. Our nonprofit organization, if anyone is interested in giving a donation for another AMC family, we don't have access to that money. It's not for us. It's only for other AMCers and AMC families who need it, is helpingamcfamilies.org. Brittany says, does Anna need individualized OT in addition to the PT? So Anna did have individualized OT the first 3 years of her life, very intense individualized OT and PT. And so that's one of the things, in fact, that's probably the biggest thing that you will do in the first year of an AMCer's life, is therapy. Lots and lots and lots of therapy. In addition to the 2, 3, 4 times a week you go to the therapy center for therapy, you're also going to want to continue that therapy at home as much as you possibly can. Charlotte, when they did Anna's ankle release, when they did the tenotomies at 4.5 months, her feet were corrected into an upright position from the serial casting that she had the first 4 months of her life. Thank you, Terry and Lorraine, for the super stickers. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Brittany, we did talk about serial casting pretty extensively in the beginning of the live. So I'm about to get off of here in just a minute. And if you want to replay the first part, you can hear all about that. So, all right, I'm going to go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in every day. I love sharing as much information as I possibly can, because in addition to teaching you guys what arthrogryposis is and just kind of familiarizing the world with this disability and this condition, which, you know, creates a better environment for all AMCers, I also know that this information often gets into the hands of new parents of AMCers, and it helps them out with figuring out where to go and what to do for their kiddos. And that's like the best thing about all of this. So thank you guys so much. We'll be on again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Anna's turn to talk. So I'm not really sure what her topic is going to be yet, but it will be arthrogryposis related. See you tomorrow. Good night.